Well, good morning, Black Rock. I'm thrilled to be here. I've already benefited so much from the church this year. I've heard every sermon, and it's just been wonderful to start the year trying to rethink who I am in light of I am. And so I'm honored to be a little part of that today when we're talking about I am a servant. Let me ask you at the start, do we have any gamers here? You young guys that you call yourself gamers, you know what I'm talking about? I'm not really into that, but I'm the curious sort of guy that I like to talk to people about what excites them. And what I understand about a lot of modern gaming, video games, is that there are different levels. You start out, but you succeed and you practice and you get into different levels that other people will never face. One social media editor talking about The Legend of Zelda, apparently that's a very popular thing, said he'll never forget, he still gets chills of the music that came on when he reached the 9th dungeon. Sounds kind of morbid if a game has a dungeon and you're trying to get into a dungeon. I don't get that part, but he said that finally getting there, the music just gives him chills. He finally made it. One person said, you've never played Super Mario Kart until you've driven on the Rainbow Road. I've never been there, but apparently it's colorful and apparently it's a road taking you somewhere. Halo is another very popular game. And they said one of the levels that people aspire to there is the library. Again, I love the thought as a writer that people have to work really hard to get into the library. So whatever else I don't know about Halo, I kind of like that aspect of the game. But the premise is this. A lot of people play Legend of Zelda or Super Mario Kart or Halo, but they've never experienced those deeper rooms. They've never experienced those levels like the experienced gamers have. What if the same thing is true about our Christian faith? What if there's a certain level of Christian experience that people just kind of play around in the shallows, but they don't really know the depth, the fulfillment, the joys and excitement of really living the Christian life to its fullest? Does that sound elitist? Might be. But what if it's true? What if it's biblical? I think it is. I think in Colossians 1, 9 through 10, Paul is inviting us into a new level of faith, a new experience. That there is a level of faith that there are some really practical ways to get there, and yet many people don't. Colossians 1:9 begins with this. We continually ask God to fill you with the knowledge of his will. We don't want you to have just a little bit of it. We don't want you to be halfway up there. We want you to be filled with the knowledge of his will through all the wisdom and understanding that the Spirit gives. Paul is describing someone who their life is marked by the wisdom and understanding the Spirit gives. They're filled with the knowledge of God's will. They're not just dipping their toes in the water. Through and through, they are defined. Their identity is based on what Paul is about to talk to them about. Now, if Paul has to continually pray that they experience this, by definition, that means he thinks a lot of people don't. A lot of people stop short of this experience. Just like a lot of people give up on games. I will never make it into the dungeon in The Legend of Zelda. I'll never drive on the Rainbow Road or make it into the library in Halo because I'm not willing to do the work. I know it takes a lot of practice, a lot of hours, but I don't want to die without knowing the depths of what it means to be a sold-out believer for Jesus Christ. Is anyone with me? To really know the knowledge of his will, to be filled with all wisdom and understanding. If that's possible, and Paul says it is, don't we want to dive in? Well, Paul's going to give us 3 steps for us to experience that and to get there. Here's what he says. We continually ask God to fill you with the knowledge of his will through all the wisdom and understanding that the Spirit gives. What's the next 2 words starting verse 10? Say it with me. So that. Say it again. So that. Paul is saying we want to become deep divers into the will of God, not to be elitist, not to be arrogant, not to pretend that we know more than everybody else, but so that 3 things will result. And these 3 things are this, that we will live a life worthy of the Lord, that we will please him in every way, and that will bear fruit in every good work. You put these three things together, live a life worthy of the Lord, please him in every way, bear fruit in every good work, and that becomes our identity. I am a servant. What does it mean to be a servant? It means to live by these three things. So let's look at them together and the invitation Paul makes for those that want to experience the fullness of the Christian life. The first one he says is this: we are called to live a life worthy of the Lord. Now that phrase, if Paul hadn't uttered it, might make some Christians suspicious. What do you mean, live a life worthy of the Lord? But it's actually a message that whenever Paul is speaking or writing to a community, that's what he said. To the Philippians in 1:27, he says this: whatever happens, conduct yourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ. To the Ephesians, as a prisoner for the Lord, then I urge you, live a life worthy of the calling you have received. To the Thessalonians, for you know that we dealt with each of you as a father deals with his own children. Paul passionately loved them. Out of that passion, what does he do? He encourages them, he comforts them, and he urges them to live lives worthy of God, who calls you into his kingdom and glory. So if Paul were here today, if you were being preached to by Paul, if you were being discipled by Paul here in Fairfield, Connecticut, I guarantee you it wouldn't take long until Paul said, here's the message for us today. We must live lives worthy of God. How many of you ever seen the movie Saving Private Ryan? A lot of you have. I'm gonna do a plot spoiler. I'm not gonna apologize. You've had 25 years to watch the movie, so I'm not blowing anything. You've had more than your fair share to watch it. But if you did see it, you know what happens? After the Normandy invasion, Captain Tom Miller, played by Tom Hanks, is selected with 7 other soldiers to rescue Private Ryan. The War Department found out that Mrs. Ryan lost 3 sons on different parts of that war. Private Ryan was the last remaining son. They didn't want her to lose all 4 sons, so Tom Hanks was sent out, go get him and bring him back. So Tom Hanks goes out and their numbers are decimated one by one. A sniper takes off one, just fighting in a battle, takes out another. They finally locate Private Ryan. They explain to him what has happened, that all of his brothers are dead. They said, you've got to come back with us. You've got a ticket home. And he refuses. They say, what do you mean? And he goes, look, if I've lost my brothers, I'm not going to abandon my brothers that are the only brothers I got left, his fellow soldiers. The Germans are coming across this bridge. We've got to hold it. I will not leave my brothers just when they need me the most. And Tom Hanks and the other soldiers just cringe because they know it's going to be a tough battle, but they realize he's not going to come without that. So they make plans to stay. And the assault that follows, all but 2 of them die. The last one to die is Tom Hanks. Sorry for the plot spoiler, but you had your chance. After Tom Hanks has been mortally wounded, he's still able to move a little bit, and the German tank is coming across the bridge, and so he just gets up with amazing courage. All he's got is a .45 pistol, and he takes on a tank with a .45 pistol, and he keeps shooting at the tank until he blows it up. Tom Hanks takes out a tank with a pistol. How could that happen? Even he's surprised. But you find out it was actually a plane from behind that blew it up, and he realized, well, it wasn't him. Although it was Tom Hanks, you never know. It could have happened. He's amazing in these movies. And so now he has just a minute or 2 left to live. Private Ryan is standing over him. The bridge is secured. Everything's fine. And Tom Hanks pulls Matt Damon toward him. And what does he say? 2 words. Earn this. And Private Ryan says, what? And he goes, earn this. And what he's saying to him, I have seen some of the bravest men I know give their lives to bring you back to your mom. You better live a life that counts. Don't let this be a waste. I will never see my wife again. I will never teach in a high school again. You better earn this. A lot of guys died for you to have this chance. And Paul is telling the Thessalonians and the Philippians and the Colossians and the Ephesians, Jesus died for you. not other soldiers. Jesus himself, God sent his son to die for you. Live a life worthy of the Lord accordingly. Now, we know Paul would never use the words earn this. We don't earn our salvation. We can't make ourselves worthy. It's that because God has died for us, he sent his son to die for us. We are to live lives in response to that are worthy of him. We don't earn it. We so don't earn it. A great analogy a friend of mine has shared is, let's say you're on a cruise ship and you can't swim. Why you're going on a cruise, if you can't swim, I'm not entirely sure, but you do it. And then let's say somehow you fall off the boat, okay? Now, maybe you're not worthy to live. If you go on a cruise and you can't swim, and then you find a way to fall off the boat, but you're basically dead, right? Because if you can't swim, it takes cruise ships a long time to turn around, to come back. You have no hope. But one of the crew members sees what's going on. They immediately grab one of those round life preservers and a perfect toss. The life preserver goes right over your shoulders and your neck. You don't have to swim toward it because you can't swim. It's the perfect throw, just in circles, that all you do is you hold onto the rope, they pull you in, and you're saved. Now, nobody would get up on the boat and say, did you see the way I held onto that rope? Man, I did it. I'm alive because I held onto that rope. It's no, dude, you were saved. He saved you. You didn't save yourself. That's the way that Paul looks at salvation. But he says when we understand we have been saved, that in fact we know it's not because of us. That's what motivates us to live a life worthy of the Lord. Not to earn it, but to live a life worthy of it. How did Christ live? He said he came not to be served, but to serve. So to live a life worthy of the servant is to say of ourselves, I am a servant. Because I am is a servant, we say of ourselves, I am a servant. That becomes our identity. We always choose the life that most glorifies God, not our own satisfaction, not our own pleasure, not our own comfort. Jesus made this very clear in Matthew 10:38. Whoever does not take up their cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Tessie is one of 4 young black girls who initiated school desegregation in the McDonough School in New Orleans in 1960. That picture you see right up there, that's not Tessie, that's Ruby Bridges. She's a little bit more famous. Tessie was the one with her. The next picture shows what they had to walk through every day to get into the school. People yelled, people called out vile things. It was violent just for these 4 little girls, 6-year-old girls, to get into school. After months of this, Tessie had had enough, and she came home to her grandmother. She said, Grandma, they yell at me. They say awful things. I just don't want to go back into that school. And Tessie's grandmother pulled down a Bible, opened it up. She read a passage. While she was starting to read it, a bee flew by, and she slapped at the bee, not to kill it. She just stunned the bee. And she picked the bee up and threw it outside. And she used that as an analogy for what Tessie needed to learn. Here's what she said. You see, my child, you have to help the good Lord with this world. He puts us here and he calls us to help him out. That bee doesn't belong here. It belongs out there. You belong in that McDonough school. And there will be a day when everyone knows that. Even those poor folks, Lord, I pray for them. Those poor folks who are out there shouting their heads off at you. You're one of the Lord's people. He's put his hand on you. He's given a call to you, a call to service in his name. We're the lucky ones to be called, and we've got to prove we can do what the Lord wants, that we're up to it. And I'm so humbled by this grandmother's depth of faith, calling her 6-year-old granddaughter to live a life worthy of the Lord. Now, I have a granddaughter within 30 minutes of this church. And I could just imagine if I was in charge of her and she came to me and said, Papo, they yell at me when I go to school. They make fun of me. They call me awful things. Everything within me is gonna wanna say, Anna, you don't ever have to go back to that school. Papa's gonna take care of it. Trust me, you're okay. But Tessie's grandmother lived by a different faith. Tessie, you are a servant. This is how you serve God. It's not always pleasant to be a servant. It's not always easy to be a servant, but it's what God has called us to do. And so here's what Tessie said as a young girl: if I can help the good Lord and do a good job, then it'll all be okay, and I won't be wasting my time. See, this is faith at its depths, and it's not just asking it of ourselves. Will we, like Tessie's grandmother, invite others to live this depth of faith? I know a small group that had a couple come in one time. They'd been there for years together, and the couple said, yeah, we just wanted you to know we're getting a divorce. And the small group said, no, you're not. What do you mean? They go, there's no adultery here. There's no abuse here. You haven't invited us. We know what this is about. We will walk through this with you, but we're not gonna just give up because it's so easy. Well, we just aren't happy anymore. We've fallen out. No. We don't want any of that. Christ died for you. We want you to live a life worthy of the Lord. Parents and grandparents, it might be even more difficult because in this day and age, what if a grandchild or a child comes to you and they're making some really bad choices? And you're thinking, I want them to be happy. I don't want them to think I'm one of those intolerant people. We're gonna say, well, it must be okay. And we change our theology and we change what we've always believed. Are we willing to say, honey, Christ died for you. I'm asking you to live a life worthy of him. Paul said that to all of his churches. Well, we say it to all of our loved ones today. It's part of being a servant, living a life worthy of the Lord. The second thing that Paul says is to please him in every way. That's what it means to be a servant. We please him in every way. And this is freeing. At first, this may be one of the most freeing messages you can ever hear, because what rips us up so much is our inability to please everybody. Because our boss wants something, our spouse wants something, our kids want something, our parents want something, our friends want something, your church wants something. And after a while, there's not enough of me to go around. And it's bewildering and it's frustrating. And Paul barrels down being a servant to one glorious, simplistic notion. You are called to please him, not them, him in every way. You weren't put on this earth to make your spouse happy, to make your kids proud, to make your parents feel good about themselves, or your friends feel loved. Ultimately, you were placed on this earth to please him. But where this really starts to bite is it also means I wasn't put on this earth to please me. If I am a servant, I don't do just what pleases me. I focus on what pleases him. Just as live a life worthy of the Lord was a common theme throughout the New Testament, whenever Paul wrote, this is the same thing too. 1 Thessalonians 4:1. As for other matters, brothers and sisters, we instructed you how to live in order to please God, as in fact you are living. Now we ask you and urge you in the Lord Jesus, do this more and more. To the Corinthians in 5:9, 2 Corinthians, so we make it our goal to please him. Altogether, the cognate verb to please, referring to God, appears 14 times in the New Testament. This is a common teaching. We should live to please God. I gave you just two. What does it mean to be a servant? It means we live to please God. It's a total reorientation of how we view ourselves in our days. This changed my marriage. I got married at 22. I may have been the most selfish man on the planet. I got married because I wanted to be pleased. I wanted to be loved. I wanted to be appreciated. And God began to change me. I remember one time with the prayer, Gary, Lisa isn't just your wife. She's my daughter. And I expect you to treat her accordingly. And when I realized how much God loves his daughters, I knew from how much I love my own daughters. Everything about my marriage changed. And so now when I go to bed, I'm thinking, God, have I pleased you today with how I've loved your daughter? It's a whole different question, a whole different orientation. Are you pleased with the way I've loved your daughter? Are you pleased with the way I'm raising our kids? Are you pleased with the way I'm acting at work? The goal is to please him. See, the goal of Christians who walk into the shallows is for God to please them. That's their entire focus. God, are you going to come through for me? They don't even think about God until there's a crisis. And God, you got to come through. I really need you. They're not making themselves available to please God. They use God as a trump card in their back pocket that they pull out whenever everything else fails. They say, okay, now I'll be a Christian. Now I'll pray. God, you've got to give me more. But that's living in the shallows. That's not the depths that Paul's talking about. My dad turns 93 next month. We live in Houston, Texas, and they visited probably 7 years ago or so. So he was in his mid-80s. It was right before Father's Day. My dad has spent a lot of his time growing up in Texas. And I said, hey, Dad, for Father's Day, there's this great Western wear store. It's famous around Houston. But we're going to take you to that. You can pick out anything you want. You want to get a hat? I'll get you boots. You want a belt? Whatever you want. My dad's face just lit up. It was fun because you don't see an 85-year-old's face light up like that very often. But I could tell, man, for whatever reason, that hit. So the next day he wakes up and says, Gary, are we going today? I said, no, Dad, we're going to go on Saturday. We've got a lot of things to do today. He said, okay. Wake up the next day. Gary, is today that? No, Dad, we're going to go tomorrow. Just hold. And I was just surprised because I just never seen my dad act like this. He was so excited. So the day came, we got up, we went to the store, and thank God, the perfect woman to help him out. This is an older woman. My dad walks in the store and makes a beeline for the hat section. He says, I want an LBJ hat. Now, being from Texas, she knew exactly what he was just talking about. Took him over to the Stetsons. He found an LBJ hat, and my dad was so happy. He said, this is one of the best Father's Days I've ever had. Now, he had an old LBJ hat. It had a hole. It was a little bit beat up. And frankly, he could have afforded 500 of them. But he was never the kind of dad that spent that money on himself. He sacrificed for us. And I can't tell you, when he said that was one of his favorite Father's Days, it made it one of my favorite Father's Days, because here was a man who had served me and sacrificed for me and given me so much, and I could please him so that he looked like a little boy with eagerness. It was just wonderful to be able to please the Father who has done so much for me. If you're in your teens or 20s, a natural question that you're always wrestling with is this: did I have a good mom? Do I have a good dad? And when you go into counseling, you'll find out no, all right? We really messed you up. Yeah, we don't understand when you're given birth at a hospital, we're given instructions. You got to really mess them up so counselors have a future living. So it's just part of our job description that we really mess you up, all right? So your answer is going to be no. But you know when you become an adult, if you're in your teens and 20s, you know the moment that you really reach maturity? It's when you stop asking, do I have a good mom? Do I have a good dad? And you start asking, am I a good daughter? Am I a loving son? That's what it is to mature with our earthly parents. And Paul says that's what it's like to mature with our heavenly Father. See, baby Christians pray, God, give me more, give me. God gives us, give me more. I need more now. And Paul says that's a child. That's people who are playing the first level of the Christian faith. That's not a mature faith. That's not somebody who sees himself as a servant. That's somebody who sees themselves as always needing to be served. If you want to go to the depths, you please the Father who has given you everything, who has sacrificed for you. So when we grow up, we ask ourselves, am I living a life that pleases God? A complete reorientation. The third thing that Paul says about being a servant is that we're called to bear fruit in every good work. What does it mean to be a servant? It means I seek to bear fruit in every good work. Everything I'm doing, how do I bear good fruit? I write a blog for marrieds and singles, and one woman wrote in response to one of my posts about trying to find a future husband. She was on one of those, I don't know if it was an app or a website or something like that. Here's what she said. The most joy I've gotten out of it so far hasn't been coming from talking to guys. It's been coming from encouraging other girls. For instance, I was reading through another girl's profile just out of curiosity, and I thought she seemed like an awesome person. So I sent her a message where I told her so and wished her good luck in her search for a husband. She was so happy I reached out, and it brought me so much joy to be able to bless someone in such a simple way. It also made me rue all the times I've withheld encouragement because of jealousy or feelings of inferiority. It's an interesting principle. You usually bless others because you feel like you have enough yourself, but blessing others will usually make you richer in some way. She is blessing someone that might be a competitor. Maybe she encourages someone and she gets the guy she wants, Hannah wants. But she said, I found such a different life, a different level of experience when even on a dating website, I'm there to do good works. And again, like every point we've talked about, this is what Paul taught all the churches. Titus 3:14, let our people learn to devote themselves to good works so as to help cases of urgent need and not be unfruitful. In Ephesians 2:10, he says, we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works. Like Tessie's grandmother said to her, why are you here? You are here to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. Now, these good works have nothing to do with salvation and everything to do with salvation. They have nothing to do with salvation and everything to do with salvation. What do I mean by that? They don't earn salvation. You will not get into heaven if you're not familiar with the message of Christ. You cannot get into heaven because you do more good works than the average person. None of us can do enough good works to merit salvation. The reason they have everything to do with salvation, it's because we are saved that we're motivated to do good works, and that becomes our focus, not to get into heaven, but to express the salvation that we already have. And so I have a motto. And I know this is modest, but who I am, one a day. Because it's so much an identity of who I am. I'm created to do good works. That's what I'm called to do. That's my identity. I don't want a day go by when I can't point to somebody and said, I made your life a little bit better. I encourage you. I helped you out. I did this. I gave a gift. I said something. I want to do good works because it's what I was created to do. Christians who live in the shallows, and a lot of you younger people, this might be what you think Christianity is. I can't sin if I'm a Christian. I'm not supposed to do this. I'm not supposed to do that. I shouldn't do that. Christians who go into the depths, they're not focusing on not sinning, on not doing bad things. They're focusing on doing good things. See, it's a complete reorientation. God forgives the bad things. So now you can forget about that. Focus on the good things. You see that woman? She used to gossip until her tongue turned blue. And today, not a day goes by that she doesn't write a card of encouragement or call somebody up or bless someone to lift them up. See that 28-year-old kid, while his friends are all doing the gaming on Friday evening, every Friday evening, he goes out and visits his grandmother at a nursing home because she's lonely and she loves to visit him. And he realizes nothing will brighten her up than like a visit from her grandson. An 8th grader, a high school student in a school where everybody's gossiping and making fun of teachers and putting others down, says, God, what good work can I do today? And maybe you see a teacher that's having a bad day and somebody, you know what, teacher, thank you for that lesson. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate what you're doing. Or you're at lunch and you see somebody that's not included and you're saying, hey, why don't you come eat with us? You're going into school saying, Lord, how can I do a good work for someone today? That's what it means to be a servant, to live Christianity at its best. And we want to live this way. So many, and this breaks my heart, are turned off from Christianity because I think it's defined by not doing bad things. And Paul says, actually, Christianity is a life devoted to start doing good things. What's the will of God? Bless as many people as you can, as often as you can. About 20 years ago, I did a tour in South Africa, Johannesburg, Cape Town. People brought me, and I brought my son with me. And they wanted me to come back. And so just the last day I was there, I said, Gary, if you will promise to come back, we're going to take you on a safari. And I was surprised because, well, you took me and my son on a safari. Oh, no. That's for tourists. That's just the surface things. It's convenient. It's easy. If you come, we'll take you on a real safari. You'll get deep in there. You'll see it like nobody else has ever seen it. And Paul is saying 2,000 years ago, and to us today, don't take the tourist safari. Go deep. Figure out what it really means to live in the will of God. And the will of God is that you define yourself as a servant. What is a servant? A servant is one who seeks to live a life worthy of God, who begins every day and evaluates every day, am I pleasing him in every way? And then is devoted to doing good works out of gratitude and worship. I am a servant.
Thank you for watching Blackrock Church's Sunday service. We're so glad you found us, and we hope this message made you feel more connected to God. In talking about connection, we find that it's super important for people to be connected to others and to community in order to grow in their faith. So if you're in the area, we invite you to join us to worship in a service. You can find out about our times and locations right here on this webpage. We'd also love to help you connect in a group and find people who can walk alongside you as you continue deepening your understanding and faith. And after you get to know us, you might even like to use your gifts to serve on a team. We believe God gave each of us unique gifts that we can use to serve those around us. One body with many different parts. If you're not able to be here in person, don't worry. We have a great online community and many ways for you to join in virtually and talk to us throughout the week. You can also stay in touch on our website, YouTube channel, Facebook, and Instagram. By visiting our website, you can also easily give your offering one time as an online gift or a reoccurring gift. Just click Give at the top. The Bible tells us that tithing is an important part of our relationship with Jesus, and we want to continue to trust God with our lives and our finances. Well, we are so glad you made the choice to get to know us and view one of our services. We hope that you join us next week. Thanks so much for watching.